Hello, I'm Kyle. Welcome to my element. This is Give Pause Hobby. I'm doing a little 1.5, episode 1.5 of Tea and Pancakes. I have not completed 5 more games, otherwise this would be episode 2. But I thought that maybe every now and then when I play a particularly interesting game or, set of games, that I would have a little, intermediary episode, which isn't really taking into account my grander plan of which factions I like to play most or like to pilot most or whatever. It's just kind of a little conversation about that specific event. So this one is going to be all about my most recent MEGA ROBO RUMBLE, the 4th one that I've done. So this is a six player game. So obviously, if you haven't seen that, there's going to be a link somewhere around here, somewhere up here, to go check out the video, because spoilers, will be here. So we had in turn order, we had the Contraption Conspiracy, and then we had the Cogwheel Cult, the Automated Alliance Director's Cut. Then we had the Mechanical Marquee 2.0 Director's Cut, Vagabot Director's Cut, and then Dummy Duchy. And the 3 Better Bot Project, the Crows, the Lizards, and the Moles, they are all in the newest update from, late March 29th, 27th, one of those. First things first, it was a ton of fun. It was also ridiculously long. It was just under 4 hours in length. When I, extracted all the talking, it was, which was about an hour, 20 minutes. That turned out to be just about 2.5 hours for the game. Just me playing the game. When I removed me talking at the camera about what was taking place. It was a different format than what I've done. That's not like a permanent, move that I'm always going to do that, but it was a fun experiment to try something different. We'll see what I do in the future. Okay, so first spoiler, the winner, Vagabot. It was the thief version of the Vagabot, because that was the only one that I had, because the 2 other classes for the Director's Cut are adjusted. I didn't have them proxied up. So it's probably the lamest, because if you're not against a human player, it steals a card from you, which, in a bot format just means it gets a point. But there are no cards to be stolen from the other bots. So it's just whenever you got the special action, you just got a victory point. So it was at the end of the game. Here we go. End of the game, we had the Vagabot close it out with 31. I know some people go above 30 for the final score. He did in his final big battle. So ended it there. Second place was Automated Alliance with 29. Third place was Contraption Conspiracy with 28. Fourth place was Mechanical Marquee with 23. And then tied for 5th were the Lizards and the Moles with 20. I guess first things first, I'm just going to give a quick overview of how the game went, some interesting things, because I was keeping track of aggression, as I referred to it, which is anytime, obviously, a faction attacked the other one, but also anytime they targeted them with some sort of ability, that is typically referred, would be a negative interaction. And it's just kind of fun to see how that data shook out. But in terms of the scoring points, it's really interesting because, Vagabot made an early jump to 10 points. His first faction to get there, and then it kind of stalled out, had a slower mid-game. The Contraption Conspiracy had just this enormous turn, which meant they were the de facto leaders until the very last turn, all the way up through turn 8. It was almost 9 full rounds. It was 5/6 of the ninth round, and until that last round, they were in first. So from turn 4 through turn 8. And then on the last one, Automated Alliance just barely eked him out, and the Vagabot surpassed both of them. The Lizards had kind of the saggiest route because they just like could not get gardens to stick on the board, so that main way of getting points just wasn't really happening. The mechanical marquee had a respectable just like increase in points, especially because typically that faction isn't the most competitive. There were a couple just like clutch bird card turns that kept them in the game, because that's their Escalated Daylight, and their trait doubled their recruiting on Escalated Daylights, which turned 5 into 10, which that happened a couple of times, and that absolutely saved their butts. Moles had some cool stuff going on. They stalled out kind of at the end. They were about to do something cool, but they didn't get a 9th turn. So honestly, I should have had them do a 9th turn just to see where they would have wound up. But I'm sure that they would have not tied the lizards had they gotten one last go. They might have even gotten in front of the cats at the very end. So let's talk about aggression. The aggression received. So in the beginning, it was pretty obvious like who was the enemy number 1, which is the cats, because the cats start everywhere. So that's one of the fun, interesting, but sometimes kind of like glitchy things about these Robo Rumbles, is that with humans, you look past the physical like presence on the map, and you can gauge off of the perceived threat of the player. But with robots, a big part, there's only one faction that actually moves to attack, which is their attack action has like the access to like guided movement towards a foe, and that's the Vagabond. Everybody else, when they get to their battle thing, it's there's usually a tiebreaker for which clearing they focus in. There's tiebreakers for which faction they focus on in that clearing. But if there aren't representatives of a certain faction there, they can't target them. Well, funny enough, at the beginning of the game, there are cats everywhere. Almost everywhere with the old setup, but literally everywhere with the new one. So it makes sense that they got a lot of aggression. And when they capped out, plateaued out in like the 4th turn, they, after that, I mean, really honestly, in turn 3, the other factions just like turned the faucet a little bit. And then like the crows, theirs just like ramps up because the table is like, hey, this isn't cool. They got like, I think 15 points in one turn. The moles and the lizards were pretty kind of neck and neck-ish, kind of a shallow incline. The Automated Alliance, when they had, towards the end, they had a couple of pretty spread out turns of lots of sympathy on the board. They're almost into I think they maybe just broke into the 3-point territory, or were going to the next turn. I can't remember, but so it makes sense they had like an uptick in turn 7. And the Vagabot wound up, the winner of the game, I need to remind you, wound up with 4 acts of aggression against him. And this is something that's interesting. I'll come back to that later. Yeah, 4, a whopping total. So let's just real quick look at the aggression delivered. And at first I was kind of surprised to see lizards just like the clear winner of this category. But I'll come back to that later, and I found out why I kind of wasn't surprised. I was kind of surprised to see cats as low as they are, like just to look at the other end of the spectrum, because they are so ubiquitous at the beginning, but they're not necessarily like dealing out a whole ton of hurt. And yeah, there isn't anything like super standoutish in that one, except I was kind of narrating the crows getting angry about specifically the Vagabot kind of like hampering their ability to close the gap to win the game. And it is cool to see how they came in second with most aggression doled out, because they wanted to win naturally. Why wouldn't they? Okay, so now ranking from 6th to 1st. This is just for this game. I'm incorporating my feelings of this game into my bigger picture. And, you know, when I get 2 more games of Root, I will have episode 2.0, where it will all be tabulated. But this is just for this experience. So 6th place, Mechanical Marquee 2.0. I openly admit in the previous episode that the reason they are at the top, you know, as high up as they are, is because a large part in the nostalgia and the fact that they're so ubiquitous in my plays with the bots. They're so easy to run, to pilot. They are easy to understand, setup is a little bit involved, but they're all kind of involved. And they're also, with a reach of 10, they're the most useful in terms of balancing a game state, to get your reach value up. So like I said before, I think the Dummy Duchy is going to eclipse them. I think, this game is a good, it helps that effect, because the reason I didn't, their story was just the least interesting. They start everywhere, but because they aren't a human, that's just sort of like just putting a bunch of speed bumps everywhere. And there is a lot of like tidal pull and push of like getting just like wiped off the map, and then hoping, like crossing your fingers of pushing back. And it happened with a couple of big escalated daylight turns. They were able to survive, but there was one turn in particular that, had they not gotten that bird card, they might have actually been removed from the game. So it was just sort of like this northeastern, just like cat, factory that would just every so often like get restocked, and they would kind of push in, and it was never really like a coherent narrative compared to the other ones. So in this game, I'm not necessarily making that my grand statement on them, but like in this game, they were the least interesting for me to watch. 5th place, Cogwheel Cult. So this is also kind of really wasn't my favorite narrative to watch. The reason, I referenced before how I was originally surprised by the amount of aggression they delivered, but then I wasn't when I really thought about it. And that's because the beginning of their turn is really just them kind of like loading a clip into a machine gun and just sort of spinning in a circle and shooting. And that's because of the way the acolytes are used to do their conversions and their conspiracies. Is that what they're called? I can't remember. The crusade, the conversions, and the sanctification, and so it's very just like, the bots on some level are all random, but it's very haphazard. But then even more so when you get to the rituals, and everyone was maxed out, so they're drawing 5 rituals a turn. Bird ones just make more acolytes, but the other suits, they target clearings there. They put a lizard, but because they don't necessarily, they target a clearing that has open building spots, but then also the most enemy buildings, which I did bring up on Better Bot Project, and Benjamin Schmaus, creator of it, genius, wonderful. Like I am hugely indebted to his work, because were it not for Better Bot Project, the Clockwork expansion wouldn't exist. None of this would exist. And I pointed out, maybe what if they targeted a clearing with open building slots, but then the least number of enemy buildings? Because really, if you have enemy buildings, you probably are going to have enemy warriors, because the bots typically protect their pieces. And that is also a meatbag lizard strategy. Go for the clearings that have 2 or 3 slots to put multiple gardens down there, because most of the game they had a single garden, so their points were just stalled out. And he made a really good point. He said it's easy to make the bots complex, and or easy to make them smart, and even easier to make them difficult. I think that's what it was, which is totally true. Like, you can just dial it up to as hard as you want. and which is why the nightmare mode is just like they get a victory point at the end of the turn. um, but he said the focus isn't necessarily to go after that strategy. It's more to be kind of get in everyone's way, which it definitely did. He also pointed out that the root bots, but also root in general, is not necessarily tooled for a greater than 4-player game. 4-player was the original cap, and that's really where I think lots of folks think it kind of like resides. I've been told 5 and 6 player is great, and I do want to play a human 5 or 6 player game. I'm not going to like play this once and say I've done it because I've piloted 6 robots. So I mean, you know, some weird stuff happens at that player count. But again, just like the cats, the lizard's story, the narrative was every turn I was like, well, let's see who gets kind of like screwed over a little bit. And they were very they didn't have like someone they really chased after. They were very egalitarian with their aggression. But yeah, those just wasn't my favorite thing to follow along. So 4th place, and this is, you know, the lowest half, but if this was like from least interesting to most interesting narrative, like the cats are here, the lizards are here. 4th place is like over here. So these top 4 are like a lot closer to the interesting side. The Vagabond. So they won. They did a great job. But the one reason that it sort of like dawned on me towards the end of the game, and it has colored my memory of the bot's story in this game, is that, again, because battling isn't, aside from the bot, the Vagabot, which in battle, they move towards a faction that's in the lead and then do battle with them. And which makes sense because they are only one piece. If battle was only like the clearing that they're in, you know, there's a lot smaller % chance that they would be there with the point leader, and they might just wind up attacking whoever. So I think it totally makes sense that they go after the leader. There is not a reciprocation on that. And by that I mean the rest of the factions all have, you know, much more board presence. Even something like the Automated Alliance, which starts nowhere, literally nowhere. So when they say, you know, battle in a certain clearing or a certain suit or whatever, there is only one Vagabond. And there is a possibility that a certain faction just might not be in that part of the map. They don't really overlap, and so they won't interact. So that's how, at first I was like, how did the leader of the game only sustain 4 acts of aggression? And that's because there's only one of them. That's the only place that they can take aggression in. I mean, in a human, again, meat space world, we look past the pieces on the board to see the players. The Vagabond is balanced with these army elements because, you know, there's only one of them, but the humans can say, well, yes, there's only one and he's over there. I'm going to close a pincher in around them and, you know, deal with it. The root bots are just like, I hear someone's in the lead. I haven't seen him. And they just beat up on each other. So, I mean, it was fun to see it and like peeking under the ruins, find his stuff, but you know, just I had things I was more interested in. Speaking of which, 3rd place, Contraption Conspiracy. I really like some of the changes they made, like little minute changes that they made from the old version, and I do like the fact that they get to the point where the other factions are like, I need to focus on them. And I know that is not like them perceiving them as a threat. It is just them perceiving them, well, I guess as a threat because they're a point leader. But it kind of, in the narrative, came across as like they started as this like upstart organized crime element that nobody heard of and they weren't very successful. But then once they had a couple of like really big attacks on infrastructure or whatever, they were very much a known quantity. And then if people saw them just like walking down the street with a duffel bag, they were like, ah! And so that was just kind of fun to watch. Now they are a little bit, I mean, it's random because the things are mixed up, you put it on the board, but I think it does a good job of making the random, you know, it's, I don't know, human brains are great at finding patterns or making stories. Here I am talking to you about all these narratives from these cardboard root bots. But it's, the brain can pretty easily kind of fill in like a storyline, a reason why they would have been putting certain things down. Even when they put something down that doesn't really make sense, the brain just fills in like, wow, put the wrong person on the job that time, crows. And yeah, so they were fun to watch. But I was really, it was super compelling that they had this like huge turn, which I was afraid they were just going to follow up awesome turn and just end the game, which would have been like super preemptive because that would have been turn 4, I think. But it was super fun to watch them just like their opportunities dry up and them get so close and then not you know, seal the deal. Okay, call back to mechanical marquee talk. Dummy Duchy. This is super fun. This is my second favorite to watch. I love the way their turns expand, they grow and they evolve just like the human duchy. I love that aspect. That's why I really like that faction. I love the rally action that was added to their daylight because it makes them a little bit more reactive on the board. There's a little bit more motion. Previously, the only movement they had was through digging, which is like boop, warping onto the board, and one of their ministers, I can't remember which, that would move the spot with the most moles. They would move half of them towards, I can't remember what, the clearing with the least amount of moles or something like that. That's the only opportunity for moving. It was just like surging in or surging up from the burrow, and then that if you had that minister that one time. So the fact that rally is there, so if moles are ever, their building gets like busted or they didn't make a building or whatever, that they go and they become helpful somewhere else is super cool. The couple changes to the captain and the other one, the formal, I think, were super fun. I like that if you double or triple tap or quadruple tap, I think, or maybe there's just 3, a suit, you like push down like that tech tree in a way that makes sense. Like the abilities of those ministers kind of connect. The way this game, it was more just like burp, 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 is random, like fox, bunny, rabbit, or that's bunny, fox, mouse, and they're just like slowly going down from the top. So they never really got to those super powerful ministers. Yeah, it was a lot of fun to watch, and I am bummed I didn't at least like just to see what it would have been, to see what their 9th turn would have looked like. So that leaves, last but not least, obviously, my most interesting narrative of the game, my one that I enjoyed watching the most was the Automated Alliance. It's just really cool. I love the Automated Alliance. The dichotomy between the cats and the Alliance, the starting almost everywhere or now everywhere and nowhere, is just like what makes Root so magical and cool. But this was just like a really fun game, and the kineticism of like those bases coming down and just like blowing up the pieces, it made for cool pictures. There were a couple times where there was like a struggle in the same clearing. Like one of their bases got sanctified, got turned into a garden. There were cats coming in to like extra mess it up, and then a base like dropped down from the sky and just blew all that stuff up. It was really fun. And yeah, they were just like their method of, you know, just kind of spreading their sympathy all around the forest and gain that support made for an interesting like carving out of points. And it's just awesome that they were second place at 29 points just getting ahead of third place at 28 points. Like, it would have been cool if they wouldn't have been that close, and the Vagabot like had his initial like then kind of closes it out. But it just made it even cooler that the Automated Alliance was like the Crows were close and the Automated Alliance was even closer. It was just super fun. So yeah, that was the Mega Robo Rumble. I probably don't think I'll ever do a 6-player round again. Maybe. But I think I'll try a 5. I am definitely looking to get some lower number ones in there, and some cool matchups that were suggested, like me being a Vagabot and having another Vagabot in there, and then some other folks, I think would be fun games. And yeah, it's just, it was incredibly long, but super fun. So if you've made it this far and you haven't seen the video, like, I guess I gave you all the cool things, but it is, I think, still entertaining to watch. So, you know, you should go check it out. But yeah, this was a really fun experiment. And, you know, thanks for stopping by and listen to me jibber jab about it a little bit more. We'll see when I get stuff back to the table and when I get another Tea and Pancakes up. But this was episode 1.5, and I will see you next time. See you, everybody.